And here we go. All right, hey, happy Friday, everyone. Today is Friday the 13th. Ooh, scary. November 13th, that is, and you're hanging out with my community manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. As always, you can hang out with us with our simultaneous Twitter chat over at #CMGR Hangout. So, hey, what's up, everybody on Twitter? If you love what you're seeing right now, or maybe you don't, and you have an idea for a future topic, or you want to come hang out with us, head over to our website at www.mycmgr.com. Click on Participate. There you'll see a form. You fill it out. Dom, Sherry, and I will get that and get back to you. It's really you guys. It's your ideas. Keep this community running and the show going on every Friday. So, all right, what do we have for you this week? This week's topic is influencer discovery. Is influencer discovery scary? Is it really appropriate for Friday the 13th? Well, nah, but today what we've done is brought a panel of community professionals who have been there and done that on influencer discovery, and wanted to say a huge thanks to Julie from Little Bird, who's with us today, who sat down with Sherry a couple weeks back to demo their product and talk through influencer discovery from the product side. And Sherry, there's a recap of that, right? She's nodding yes. So we'll make sure that we get that in all the write-ups. So with that, I just let everyone introduce yourself. Sherry, go.
I just left to go find that link. Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Reddy, and I'm the community manager at Magento, as well as co-producing GR Hangout.
Hey guys, I am Dom, community manager for Be the Change Revolutions, as well as a co-host here, and I'm mad stoked for this panel. This is going to be really good stuff.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. My name is Rachel Miller, at Rachel Lou Miller on Twitter. I am a social strategist at Pure Matter, and I also co-host Social Business Hour on Mondays with Brian Fanzo and Kristen Cardos.
I'll go next. Okay, hey everyone, I'm Julie Zisman. I'm head of marketing at Little Bird, and we have an influencer discovery platform, so we help companies like IBM find people to the right influencers to connect with so they can drive their business forward.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Cunningham. I am a digital strategist at FCB in Toronto, and I don't do much for FCB's brand itself, but I work with a variety of clients as their agency strategist and design influencer campaigns for quite a lot of them.
Hi everyone, hi, I'm Chelsea. I work for a company called HubSpot. We are a marketing automation software. I am the community manager and the social media manager and multiple hat wearer for anything to do with the social channel.
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. I'm Brew, the director of Awesome at BTC Revolutions and co-producer here at my community manager. So let's just jump into the first question right away, which is, what are the key components of a successful influencer program? Who'd like to bite that off right away?
I can jump in.
Yeah, all right.
So we work with both B2B and B2C clients on influencer campaigns, and really the first part is understanding your goals with influencers, and I'm apologizing in advance because my office just has been lit up by a sunbeam. So it's like having my own personal spotlight. So it's really important to understand the goals that are important to your business and how influencers can add to them. There's something, when you're doing influencer, it usually looks something like discovery, so finding the right influencers, engaging them, and then activating them, but it's really important to understanding your goals when you get to the activation layer. So if you're a B2C company, it might look something like, I want to find people who are contextually relevant to other moms that love crafts, so that I can find people who have influence. When you're a B2B marketer, it's a bit more like, I want to understand who the industry experts are on things like marketing automation or artificial intelligence, so that you can understand who to reach out to and brief on products and get input on strategy. So it's really important to understand your business goals when you're developing an influencer program and a strategy around it.
Yeah, I think Julie's absolutely right in that it's really important to find not just good influencers, but the right influencers for your campaign. When I'm developing an influencer campaign, I don't always look for people who are experts in the type of product I'm trying to sell. So maybe they don't buy like our brand of cookies, but they're experts with our target audience. And so I'm tapping into them not just as someone who can talk about cookies, but someone who can really sit down with me and help define the strategy and how to reach the audience that I'm looking to get. And I'm not just, getting space on their blog or space on their Twitter feed, but I'm getting the brains in their head. They know their audience better than anyone else, and they know the best way to reach them. And that's really what I'm looking for in a solid influencer, is a partner who knows how to reach the people that I want to talk to.
I'll actually add on to that. I like the word partner there. I think for us as well, it is kind of a mutually beneficial relationship, and it's also relatively consistent. So it's not necessarily a one-time situation, but it might be a situation where, we do something now, we potentially do something in the future, and then as we continue to go down that road, we're consistently helping each other and building that brand.
And Chelsea, the other Chelsea, I see you also joined us. Did you want to quick introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Chelsea Farnham. I'm a social content strategist at IBM. Basically, I work on a product where we're listening quite a bit to influencers. So it's less of a targeting and engaging with, and more of a listening, discerning insights from the native conversations that are happening amongst the people who matter to our business.
Awesome. Well, what I'm seeing over on Twitter is definitely people talking about business goals that really resonated well, making sure you have those, as well as link to business goals, have a strategy, start by listening to your community. So definitely that rang home for everybody. Question number 2 is, how do you put together your influencer personas? So I'd love to hear first, I guess, if somebody could take and talk a little bit about what a influencer persona might be, and then, we can kind of dig into how you put those together. Does anyone do influencer personas? That would be the first question.
I'll jump in. I'm a huge persona fan. Sales, marketing, definitely influencers, and typically when I build out a campaign, I break it down into 3 influencer personas. You have your amplifiers, so your influencer who has a large social network, your subject matter expert who will help you co-create content, and then you kind of have your I just forgot what my third one was, so we're going to have 2. But having a persona is very important.
For me, it's understanding who, we sell to 3 different subject matter experts, so it's usually in the realm of digital, in the realm of social, and in the realm of content. So for me, it's understanding there's a lot of people who talk about marketing, but understanding who is an influencer on that specific subject point, so that we can make sure that the language that we're using is most resonant to any of those individual buyers.
I think for us, we start with kind of the buyer persona, so the people that we're trying to reach, and we think about what are those kinds of people going to be looking for, where might they already be looking for their content, where might they be reading, who might they be looking at, and then we look for people who kind of speak to what our buyer persona is and might resonate well with those folks. And I think we also kind of break it down into, what we need. Everyone's been kind of talking about the kind of the subject matter experts and the writers. We have a blog, and sometimes we will get an influencer to write for the blog, so perhaps that's someone who has a good writing style, who already has a lot of good content that they write. And we also do things like a Twitter chat, so sometimes we might look for someone who has a large Twitter following, is already really engaged in Twitter, and sort of we really also plug it into what it is that we're looking for out of that relationship.
Yeah, I had my microphone unmuted, but then Chelsea beat me to it. I basically said everything I was going to say. I also wouldn't really look for an influencer persona. I look for the buyer persona. I'm really, the content is amazing, and obviously I want to find an influencer who creates good content. I want it to work, but what I'm really looking for is their audience. I mean, that's what I'm trying to tap into. So if I need to reach moms on a certain campaign, then I'm going to go hang out at the places where moms hang out and see who turns up in that influencer circle. If I'm running a campaign for something, on the government side, if I'm working on environment, then I'm going to look, more to news-heavy sites and places where people who like to talk about the environment go to hang out. So it's really, for me, it's not so much about the influencers so much as the people that they're appealing to. So I want someone who can create top quality content, but really what I'm looking for is that they're talking to the same people I want to talk to.
So basically they influence the people you're trying to reach, right? So our third question, and before we get into that, everyone who's watching, please, if you have any questions for our panel, I'm sure we'll have time for them. So tweet away, tweet at the @mycmgr handle, along with our hashtag, and we'll try to bring your questions in. Third question is this: where do you start looking for influencers? So I've been tasked with doing some influencer outreach. Where do I start?
I start with social listening, and I try to find out who's talking about what I'm talking about, and then maybe that will lead me to an influencer, but maybe it will also lead me to a regular person talking about an influencer. So most social listening tools will have some aspect of influencer management built in. So at work, that's also often Sysomos. For any side projects I have, I'm currently using Zoom, and they're phenomenal for influencer search. But my absolute favorite influencer tool is Tracker. They make it really easy, but it is sort of a tool you buy exclusively for influencer management. So if influencers are, something you do a couple times a year, that tool might not make sense to you, and you might want something that's a little bit more baked into your social listening. But ultimately, that's where I start, is just by listening to what's happening on the internet and figure out who's talking about it, where they're talking, and where it's resonating.
So that's where Little Bird, I think, has great legs. We exceed in discovery, and we actually do things in context. So we allow you to run reports on any topic, and we're actually discovering influencers on Twitter. So you can run a report, again, on anything from artificial intelligence to crafting products, and we will surface a network of up to 1,000 records that includes people, companies, and associations, and then we'll stack rank those people by the number of relationships that they've developed around that specific topic. So the project that I did with Sherry was about community managers. So we ran a report on CMGR, and we ran one on community managers, and we merged the list to find out all of the different people that were connected on those two topics and the top 100 people so that were surfaced on those topics. So in any list, you're going to have, as Emma mentioned, you'll have absolute influencers, but then you'll also have a number of people who are actually practitioners or just everyday people who are interested in the topic, but also could be influential in the topic. So we really excel in kind of what we call influencer discovery.
Yeah, I would second that. I use Little Bird as my first go-to when it comes to influencer discovery. I'm constantly looking at all different sorts of areas within IBM's business, whether that's cloud computing or mobile or analytics, and each one of those topics dives down into some really specific keywords that are relevant just to that particular community. And I feel like that's really important, that you don't just look at cloud computing, but you look at software as a service, or you look at public cloud or hybrid cloud. And I think Little Bird is really great when you you feed it with those specific key phrases, and it finds the people that are influential within a particular niche rather than within a really large group. And the way they sort and rank is really helpful, because it can help you filter out like bots and dive down to the actual real people, which is really important to what I do for my work.
And one of the new, Emma, just for your information, one of the new things that we'll have in our next release is we'll actually give people the ability to run hashtag reports. So literally you can look at, we call it audience analysis. So everybody who's involved in a specific conversation around a hashtag, and then looking at how people cluster together in groups of influence around a specific topic.
So this time I'll say that Emma actually kind of beat me to what I was going to say, as well as Julie and Chelsea said some really good things. I know Little Bird has been really helpful as well. But I'm also the biggest, I think stalker is probably the wrong word, but I'm the biggest kind of researcher in social. So I use social media as kind of almost an address book or a notepad. So if I am, let's say, reading a blog article, or if I meet someone or watch a YouTube video, something that I really like, the first thing that I'll do is I'll go to Twitter, for example, and I'll sort of type in their handle so that I can add it, and that way I can kind of follow along and see if they tweet anything interesting, and it's kind of a nice way to start to get to know people. So I really kind of just look at everything that I'm already looking at, whether it's blogs, whether it's videos, whether it's Twitter or whatnot, and just start to collect those people and kind of nurture those relationships over time as well.
I think that's a great point. You know, like when I think of like one of the most powerful things out there is like word of mouth, right? So, you know, this person told me that I should try this, and you're more likely to do it. You know, if you're like doing that yourself and you're cultivating all of those, and you're asking other people that do the exact same thing, aka everybody on this panel or everybody that you work with, you know, on the different accounts or the agency you work with. Who do you think would be a good influencer for this? Hey, this is what we're doing. Who do you think would work well? When you actually do end up asking that person and you go, hey, Chelsea actually recommended that I talk to you about this. Number one, they're going to have more buy-in because of the relationship they have with you. And there's already sort of that trust that's there. You know, right now, you know, I'm in the middle of an activation and we're doing a, you know, for a specific campaign, and we have to try to find influencers across the country for something specific. And, you know, one of the best ways that we can do that is just literally asking everybody that works on or around or sort of near the account, like, hey, who do you think would be good for this? And then when you send out that email, number one, it's more personalized, and number two, you know, you're really tapping into the knowledge that somebody has of interacting with somebody on a day-to-day basis.
I'm glad somebody else brought out the word stalking. I bet everybody on this panel has had that experience where you meet someone in person and you say, oh, I follow you on Twitter, and I kind of know everything about you already.
Yeah, I soften that by calling it creeping. But yes.
I think you need to call it what it is.
I call it friend market research. That's what I use. So.
The worst is I was at a conference a week ago, and I met Coca Sexton from LinkedIn, and I totally had a fangirl moment where I was like, like, wait, you're right here in front of me, and I was like, I cannot believe I just had a fangirl moment. It was, but I only know him through social connections, so it was pretty funny.
I actually my absolute favorite stalking story is a story that Ron Tite tells. So it didn't happen to me, but he went to the Westin Hotel and tweeted at them something about like not having shampoo bottles, and so they went and thanked him by giving him like a whole tray of shampoo bottles plus like some chilled drink. But the next time he went to the hotel, they obviously remembered that, and they'd been hearing that he was sharing that story about good customer service in some of his speaking engagements. So the next time he went to the hotel, they'd figured out like his favorite food, which is I think chips, that was in his room, and his favorite drink, and they'd even like grabbed a photo of him and his dog off Instagram and like framed it and put it in his room. And so he did the speaking engagement in Toronto last summer, and he brought out the agency strategist who is responsible for that to give us like this whole workshop on stalking your customers and what their ROI of that could be. So it's a really good story. If you get a chance to see Ron Tite talk in person, he obviously tells that story a lot better than I do.
I like that you just said ROI of stalking. That's probably something to remember. I think my personal favorite sort of stalking or friending moment is the girl that actually had the job that I have now. I distinctly remember about 3 years ago seeing sort of a blog article that she wrote about how they gave the CEO the Twitter account for the day, and I kind of clicked through and looked at her on Twitter. I thought, oh, this girl is so cool. I would love to be her at some point. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, 3 years later, here I am, and I kind of approached her one day. I was like, I remember this many years ago, and I kind of wanted to be you, and she kind of thought it was super creepy, but laughed, and it worked out well for us.
I have a quick question for you guys as we're talking about starting to look for influencers. Is what if your challenge is looking for them regionally? Is that for me at least, I think that's where it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. It's one thing when you're doing a nationally and really leveraging word of mouth, but what if you're trying to specifically get but in a city, in a town, that sort of thing. You guys have any advice on where to start there?
I don't want to
I
use the
typically,
exact same. No, go ahead, Rachel.
I use a tool. I use Clear. Is usually if I'm looking for regional influencers on a certain topic, I use Clear because they make it really easy to drill down by expertise, by even down to a city. So it takes the guesswork out.
Cool.
We also, sorry.
Go.
Littlebird also does regional targeting, so you can start by targeting a region. We actually often recommend to people, though, to pull the list, because there's different fields that we can pull data back from, so it's often easier to run the topic list and then look at our geographic breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, I found that a lot of the tools that I use do geographic, but I find it's a lot easier to target, say, like all Canadians than to really get down to the regional level. I find that's something where tools actually differ quite a lot in how they determine where someone lives. So some will determine based on the location of the computer, some will determine based on where someone says they live, some will determine based on where someone geo-targets their specific content. So each tool seems to have a different way of measuring where people live, and ultimately I find that, to be honest, I get a lot of incorrect information from a lot of the tools out there. So I usually look for people who have an audience where I want to have that audience, and work backwards from there and do my research on where the influencer lives. I mean, we know we live in a global economy now. Like, influence is global. I'm in Canada, but I read bloggers out of the US, the UK, all across the world. So a lot of the time, the best influencers for my Canadian campaign may not actually be in Canada. Some brands are cool with that, some aren't. So sometimes that's going to depend on who you're designing the campaign for and what their parameters are. But I find that the best starting point is to look for an audience profile that meets your geographical recommendations. So for me and pretty much all my brands, that's definitely Canada, and sometimes even more narrow to Ontario. I haven't done anything narrower than that just because of, like, I don't work at any small businesses. They're all pretty large companies, so it's usually Canada-wide, although sometimes we'll get as narrow as Ontario.
Awesome, thanks. We're going to bring in a couple questions from Twitter. First is from Brian Fanzo. Hey, Brian, thanks for hanging out with us on a Friday. He has a question for the group. For social-based influencer programs, what role does reach and number of followers play in who is an influencer?
Ooh, I would like to take that one. That's a big point for me because I find that there's a lot of ways to gain followers on platforms like Twitter that have nothing to do with your real level of influence. You can purchase followers, you can join different bot groups that'll follow back, and a lot of times people have an inflated followership, and that has really nothing to do with how much people enjoy their content or what relevance they actually have within their business. So I tend to even look at within like a Littlebird printout, like I'll look at the people who have the most followers, and a lot of times they end up being people who are not influential. They're people who are kind of gaming the system. And so I try to find like that sweet spot. A lot of times I'll cut out like the top 10% and start looking for people who are being followed back by other people, and I find that to be more significant. The network is a lot more significant to me than the pure number of followers.
Yeah, that's one thing I think Tracker does really well is they show how all the influencers are connected. So you can see like this influencer is friends with this influencer and they cross over and together they meet all these people in the middle. So if I want a bunch of influencers to talk to each other and that's part of my campaign to get engagement going, then I'll pick a bunch of influencers who are interconnected. But if I want to reach entirely different audiences, then I'll make sure that the influencers I pick don't have so much overlap in the middle. Ultimately, like what I'm going after is the audience. So if you don't have a high reach, it's probably not going to be a good fit for a large business. Like I'm definitely shopping for an audience size, but it has to be the right audience. So the first thing I look for is the quality of how well your audience lines up with my demographic. So if you're high reach and high resonant, but I'm looking for moms and your audience is primarily, you know, millennials or even Gen Z, then, you know, that's not that helpful to me, but I'm looking for high reach and high resonance with the people I want to talk to.
I'm going to add to the resonance point and say the other thing that I look for is engagement. So to me, it's one thing if somebody has a high number of followers, but it's another if you look at, you know, what they're tweeting, they're actually tweeting back at people, or they're retweeting things, or you're getting people who are mentioning them in other conversations. So to me, it's a mix of, you know, does this person have a large following? Yes, I would like them to tweet perhaps what I'm talking about or our chat or something like that back to their following. But at the same time, if their following's not engaged, if they're not engaging with their following, it's not a real kind of good partnership, I think, for us.
So there's two things that most of our customers look at. One is the thing that Chelsea from IBM called out. It's we call it emerging. So there's a filter in Littlebird that actually that helps you look at emerging influencers. So people who are quickly gaining ranks in the network. And then the other one is people look at like average tweets per day. And the reason that they do that is if you're tweeting over 200 times a day, you're using automation. So if you're looking for authentic, and again, it depends on your business goal. If you are looking for pure impressions and you want a B2C play where you want to put a message in front of everybody, you know, more than 200 times a day might be great for you. But if you're looking for that authentic engagement and you want to try and connect directly with influencers, you're looking at someone who's definitely using automation. And so understanding those kind of behaviors of people on social can be really critical to help people make decisions about who to connect with.
I just want to echo Julie. I think it really does come down to your goals for your program, because if you are just trying to drive impressions on a hashtag, then followers of your influencers is really critical because it's a purely mathematical game. But if you are trying to drive business value and actually click-throughs, that's generated from engagement. So those influencers who may have a smaller network but highly engaged is what's going to move the needle for you.
All right, I'm going to jump us into another question. Manish, thanks for hanging out with us on our Friday. Asked, does following influencers help us to gain visibility on the social world? So basically, if I follow a bunch of influencers, will that help me be visible? Anybody got an answer for that?
I'll start. I don't think that on its own necessarily that will help you. I think it's in conjunction with a couple of different things. So if you're following those influencers and perhaps retweeting their content or creating content that, you know, is kind of similarly helpful that other people might want to retweet, I think it's a good way of learning and a good way of starting to get into the circle, but I don't think you're actually going to get all the way there without actually doing some of the work and having some good content or being helpful yourself.
Cool. Another question that came in from NYC Paula. How do you identify who within your existing communities are your best influencers? So within your existing communities, how do you find the influencers?
By listening and paying attention to how the community is interacting with itself. Like not necessarily people that are responding to what you're saying, but the people that are responding to what other people are saying and asking those questions. And even talking about things outside of your community. Like those are the ones that you can just tell are the ones that are sort of leading people.
Excellent answer. Michael, thanks for joining us. Michael says, what do you do when someone approaches you as an influencer? Like, hey, I'm an influencer. Here's my influencer resume. So what do you do?
We get this a lot, and it's really interesting in the use cases that we get it for. So there's a bit of an element of influencer validation, and people do sometimes use Littlebird for that. So the use case that I've heard it for is especially in the hospitality industry, where people are saying, hey, I'm an influencer, cop me something. So understanding, like, is that person an influencer and what kind of reach and resonance does that person have can be really important to those people. So again, it depends on your business goals, and it is good to have tools to understand, like, if someone's talking to you, where they fit within a network or community.
And just in case anyone from the airline, hospitality, or bourbon industry is listening, I'm an influencer in all of that. So please fly me around. Go ahead, Chelsea.
I was just going to say, I think there's also an element of you have to be able to kind of put your money where your mouth is in that sense, or you have to be able to show that you actually are an influencer. So for us, we'll get plenty of people who approach us for like writing blogs or who want to be featured in some of our content. And the first thing that we look at is, okay, what value do you bring? Do you actually write good content? Do you have something good to show? And if the answer is yes, then that's probably a conversation we want to continue. And if it's not really, then maybe that's something you say, hey, you want to go back and work on these things, and maybe we'll talk again about this later.
Here's an interesting question. Another one from Manish says, how long can an influencer be an influencer? Are there any metrics defined for them?
That's a new question. I think it goes back to like how you put things in context. So if you're looking at a conversation, like what's the time frame and the context? And yes, someone can absolutely have peaks and valleys of influence, but using social tools, either listening analysis or using a tool like Littlebird to understand where they fit in a network over time helps you understand like how relevant that person is to the conversation.
Yeah, I think influence is a constantly moving target. If you made it on a list 5 years ago, it doesn't mean you're influential today. I mean, you could be, but it's likely you're not. And I think if you're running an influencer program, you need to be constantly auditing, especially like I work with a lot of programs that are long-term. They go 2-3 years. And so the people who are alphas often don't make it towards the end for a variety of reasons. So keep checking your tools and just their engagement with other members of their community. Like, are they trying to maintain their influence by staying contextually relevant?
I think there's a balance there. I mean, social media, it moves fast. So you should be fairly active on a regular basis in order to maintain your influence. But by the same token, like if you get if I get really busy at work for 4 months and I'm not able to do as many, Twitter chats as I used to be able to do, and I kind of drop off the face of the earth for a while, I find that when I come back, my community is still in place. The people that, I was friendly with in the past, they're still there. They're excited to, get back in touch and chat. And social in a lot of ways works like friendships. And sometimes you drop in and out of touch, but that doesn't mean that you forget about the people. So I think there is some room for influencers to maintain their influential status, even if they have to go dark for a bit. I think there's always permission to move offline and take breaks and still be able to come back to, if not quite the same platform, but to still maintain some of your influence and credibility in the space. But you're probably not going to want your first week back to start pitching companies to work as an influencer. You're probably going to want to spend a little bit of time sort of reestablishing your personal brand and those relationships before you jump into anything too serious. But I don't think people should be scared to take 5 minutes away and that they'll lose their credibility by going dark for a little while.
And I think that does bring up a really good point, and it's something that I have to be careful because it could be something that's kind of soapbox-ish. But there are so many. We were joking around about it, like in the chat. Like, there's so many self-proclaimed influencers out there. That people. It's really easy to just type the word influencer in your Twitter bio and think that that's good. Like, that doesn't make you an influencer. And a lot of it is more than just saying stuff online or spending 19 hours a day on Twitter. Like, that doesn't make you an influencer either. Like, people have said it. You need to be able to, yeah, you're right. It does make it searchable. Great SEO. Good job. But it's one of those things that you need to actually, and we were talking about it. You need to bring value. You need to actually have something to offer. So when it does come down to that, being in community and all of these other things. Not all of it is online. We're talking about a lot of it, and there's great tools to find people, but that doesn't mean that it lives there. It can just start there. So, that's the important thing, I think. And see, now I'm rambling because I'm definitely right up on the soapbox. But it does take a lot there. And Rachel, you hit it on the head. It's definitely a moving target, and there's a lot more than your vanity metrics have to offer.
So, hey guys, Eva has a question that just came in. She says, on a local level, do you find some influencers don't have large followings but are still impactful in their communities? I see a lot of head nodding.
Most definitely. I think those micro influencers wield way more power than those with larger followings. They typically have a higher engagement rate, and when they ask their community to do something, those folks likely do, versus larger followings. You get that like 5% activated when you would much rather have that 30-40%.
And then Eva's got a follow-up question, which is, how do you explain their value to a client who has a tendency to associate influencer value with the number of followers?
So I can take that one. So a couple of years ago, I was working a different job with a client who was a coffee brand, and the coffee brand had a lot of really enthusiastic fans who would post on the Canadian page and the UK page and the US page, and then they had fan groups online. And some people became really known within that community for being able to troubleshoot, for having excellent product knowledge. Like, they actually made my job as a community manager easier, because if they'd answered a question, I wouldn't even have to fact check. I'd be like, yeah, whatever he said. So what I would do is I would go and I would grab screenshots of them answering people's questions and the fact that people took them seriously. And so when we ran a campaign where we were doing taste tests of a new flavor, these were exactly the people we reached out to, because in that particular community, their opinion held weight. So so even though they almost never had anything to say outside the coffee community, and most of them weren't all that active on social media at all, within that particular group, their opinion would hold more weight than almost any other blogger that we could reach out to. So if we were looking for people who were invested in that community and already a part of it, there was really no better person to reach out to.
I've also seen that in academic communities. Sorry, Chelsea.
Go for it.
Yeah, so sometimes for IBM we do research into different venues like quantum computing or artificial intelligence, and things that are still just so nascent in these communities that are really focused still in the research space. But we find that if there's somebody who's written a paper in an academic setting and they publish that on Twitter and they have influence, a lot of times they only have a couple hundred followers, but that gets retweeted by a huge percentage of their network because it's already a IRL organic community. And so the social network is simply a mirroring of that level of influence in real life.
I'll go ahead and add, I like that Chelsea used the word percentage. That was the word that I was going to use too. I think it's kind of a game that you can also point to where you say, hey, the percentage of engagement or the amount of engagement there is compared to the number of followers is actually significantly higher than there is if there's a large following and pretty much no engagement. So at that point, I think it becomes how much bang you're actually going to get for your buck. You might just get a whole lot more with a smaller community. And then I think the other one is just proof. Again, I'll go back to, are they doing things online? Are they actually sharing? Are they actually engaging? Because if so, then that's more than a billboard. That's an influencer. If not, it's kind of a set it and forget it. You may or may not get what you want out of that situation.
All right, I'm going to quick jump us into one of the, actually, you know what, we're going to skip some of these. We have a lot of questions coming in, and they're all good. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm just going to bring another one in. And actually, this one's pretty freaking hilarious. Jeff Soto asks, what's the worst influencer pickup line you've received? I kind of just want to make one up. That would be funny. But have you guys had any bad influencer pickup lines?
I've never had a specific line, but I was complaining about this in sidebar chat earlier. But every time Joseph M. and I are having a conversation on Twitter, like literally every time, and we talk a fair bit, we find we get spammed by a lot of social tools. I guess they're watching us, they're watching our content, whatever, but like it's the same people over and over and over again to the point where we actually can't have a conversation on Twitter anymore. We have to take it to DM or something because they're always just trying to like grab us as soon as we start talking, and it's kind of weird. Please stop doing that.
We also get a lot of, because our brand has a decent amount of reach and we're kind of a marketing brand, we get a lot of people who will message us and say, hey, we know you like marketing, but we have this following that, and it would certainly be of interest to our followers. Can we work together? And typically it's we appreciate that, but just because you have a following doesn't mean that it necessarily matches up with what we're looking to do.
I was really hoping to hear something like, oh yeah, somebody came up to me and said like, hey, just so you know, everyone cares what I have to eat.
There is a category of influencer tools out there that does brokered relationships, where they actually will introduce you, or you can do like a category search for paid introductions to influencers. So we often get emails saying, hey, we'd like to be in your influencer network for paid introductions. And the funniest email I've ever got was like, hey, I'm writing you about my dog. She's like a #3 a YouTube influencer that has this much reach. And it was like, wow, that is crazy that people are just making their whole life and their living around their pets. But it is happening out there.
Do you have videos of that dog?
There were videos included. I'll send that as a follow-up link in Twitter.
Excellent.
Oh, that's a
Hey, Brew, I thought of one for you.
Yeah.
Hey, girl, you need to work on your SEO because I've been searching for you my whole life.
Love it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That is excellent. Oh, dang. All right, let's jump into another question. This is from Constance. Hey, what's up? What are 3? So she asked for 3. So let's just everyone kind of maybe shout one out here. Like, what's a main characteristic of a powerful influencer? And I would say I just want to go with the first one. For me, it's that the influence. It's that people talk about them. Like you see that people are actually responding to what they're saying. More than just it falling on deaf ears when they tweet, talk, Instagram, whatever. But what else? What else you guys got?
I'd say the main.
Sorry, go ahead, Chelsea.
The main metric that I'm always looking for is amplification, which is kind of just like one word for what you just described, kind of, Bruce. Just are people promoting the words that this person is saying and putting their own? They're willing to put their own name attached to what this person is saying, because that's a real vote of confidence.
I think it's when people take action on the things that they're saying. So a lot of, and even outside of social channels. So we know at Little Bird 1/3 of all of our website traffic comes from articles that influencers write about our product. So when it's great that a lot of people say things on social media, but when that activity actually drives things back to our website through referral traffic, that's the type of behavior that we're looking for. So having the ability to kind of understand that throughput is really important.
I would add that they have something new and interesting to say, because I spend a whole lot of time, I mean, it has to be correct, but I spend a whole lot of time reading similar articles, but someone who can write with authority about something interesting that I haven't read quite yet in that field is somebody that I want to continue to listen to. And
Awesome. I am gonna, since he tweeted at us, asking if everyone saw his Movember page. I had to bring it up, so Patrick, Helen, shout out to you. And look at what a baby face there, huh? That's quite impressive. All right, so next question is Michael asks, he says, thanks for the reply, guys, and as a follow-up, how are you guys approached as influencers, or are you guys approached as influencers, and if so, how do you respond? I say yes, I'll take the free bourbon, Michael.
I think it depends. I've done a few things through Influencer, so sometimes, through a platform like that. But much like when I'm looking for influencers, when people approach me, I'm also looking for partnerships. So, it's not an official, influencer thing, but I'm teaching a course this weekend. In my spare time, I work as a baby wearing educator, and that community found out about my day job and asked me to teach, a class on digital marketing for people who design baby carriers or retail baby carriers or whatever. So I'm working with Zoom, and they're giving my students access to their tool for a week so that in my class, my students can poke around with real data. And that helps me as a person because, I'm teaching a class and I'm able to give them hands-on skills and get their hands in the numbers, which is kind of my favorite thing ever. But it's also good for Zoom because now I'm bringing new people to talk who are interested in learning about marketing and social listening, and I'm putting their tool in front of them. So I find that's really, really useful as well. So I find really no matter what side of the equation I'm on, I want it to be a partnership. I want there to be strategic thinking on both sides, and I want there to be value for everyone involved.
I get approached as an influencer often, but usually for community management related things, and then I drag them onto CMGR Hangout and make a topic around what they approached me about, right, Julie?
Mutually beneficial partnerships. So it worked out for everyone. And I think Marshall Kirkpatrick, who's the founder of Little Bird, and I'm going to pull out Brian Kramer, who is the CEO of Pure Matter. It's all human to human, so it's about being authentic and understanding that the people that you're interacting with, they have day jobs, they're trying to do their things, and just being authentic with everybody and understanding that everyone does have influence. So it's really about treating everybody with the same respect, and even if you are an influencer, understanding everyone has an opinion and a value.
I also can't let this just sit in the side chat. You almost said mutually beneficial partridge ships, and since that's a type of a bird and you work for Little Bird, you should use that all the time. So
on it.
There you go.
That's awesome. All right, one more question from Twitter. Another one from Brian Fanzo. Says, how do you sell value or ROI of influencer on engagement? Like retweets and hearts, comments and clicks? No? Or not?
The best thing about marketing is that literally everything is trackable if you know how to set it up properly. So if I'm paying an influencer, or even if the influencer is doing it for free but I'm using my time, I kind of know what the value is there and what I'm spending. And then everything is trackable, so I can see how much traffic you're driving my way. If I've got my website set up properly, I can not just track how much traffic I'm getting in, but where people are going on my site and how many of the people being driven from that influencer are actually leading to qualified leads and potentially sales. I mean, that's why I'm in this business, man. I love the numbers. I can track anything you want. I can tell you, I can turn anything into an ROI and figure out if it was worth it or not.
Sexy spreadsheets.
I think that there's something that Chelsea from IBM touched on earlier today, which is understanding how engagement leads to research tactics. So there's a lot of information that influencers deliver that is leading edge. Like, influencers often say things 3 to 6 months ahead of the market. So using engagement tactics to flesh out some of those interesting topics that are leading edge can be really valuable, especially with all of the new elements that are being added into social, like Twitter polls. Like, that's a huge opportunity that is just a click of a button to collect information from people out in the market.
Let's see here. I'm just trying to look. We got, how do you separate true? Yeah, let's talk about this real quick. How do you separate the influencers from the noise? So true influence from noise.
I think it all comes back to engagement and their true expertise. I know there's a lot of, as we were talking earlier, like, what's the worst thing anyone can say? And is if you have to introduce yourself as an influencer, you're probably not. So if you don't have any body of work to back up what you're saying, to me, you're not very influential, because you're just more of that echo. You're the noise, versus a voice of reason. So and engagement, like, are people actually responding to their content, to their tweets, or are they just kind of shouting from the street corner?
Sure, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but another thing to say about this is, like, as great as every tool is out there, don't just run a report, right? Like, you got to look, you got to use your own, creeping, your own intuition. You got to go actually check out the account, and use a little bit of your intuition as well, I think.
And do some social listening. I mean, are there more people talking about this influencer than they're talking about themselves? What do other people think of them? Are they making fun of them, or are they on board with what they're saying? If you start a message, how far does it spread? Who does it get to? How many people agree with them? What's the quality of your reach? I mean, if just like 1 million people see it, but not one of them passes the message on further, that I'm not going to say 1 million impressions isn't valuable, but it's definitely something to weigh into the equation, that nobody takes the message seriously enough to do anything with it or action on it past that point.
And there is noise, but also understanding that sometimes somebody who's down in the layer of noise actually has a more meaningful network than for the business goal that you're trying to accomplish than the person at the top of the list. So really, again, putting that contextual layer around the things you're trying to accomplish, adds a lot of intelligence that helps you make better decisions.
Here's a kind of interesting question from Guy. Hey, Guy. Thanks for hanging out with us. Guy asks, who, quote-unquote, measures if one is an influencer?
I think that really goes to like what Rachel said. The fact that like influence and influencers is such a moving target, it really depends on what you're measuring against. Like you can have somebody like a Brian Fanzo who has just boatloads of followers and like really loyal people that will follow along with him. But if you're going to try to talk to him about baby wearing stuff like Emma, like he's not going to be an influencer in that regard. But then you could talk to Emma, who has a fraction of his followers, and she's going to have a ton of influence there. So, I mean, you really have to change depending, like you have to set your goals first and what you're looking for, and then you have to use that as your jumping point, not a follower count or anything else like that.
I'm actually going to call you on that. If I was running a baby wearing campaign and I wanted to reach out to dads, because I've done some social listening getting ready for this course, and only 12% of the people who talk about baby wearing are dads. If I wanted to get more dads in on the conversation, I would totally reach out to someone like Brian Fanzo, who does talk about being a dad quite regularly on social media, and then I would send him a bunch of carriers, teach him how to wear it, and get him to talk. And that is how I would start that conversation.
Well, I stand corrected. This is why I'm never on any influencer lists about community management, because I don't know anything about it.
So we do two things. We let the network say who's an influencer. So again, it's based by the number of relationships that you've created within a network. And then the other kind of cool things that we do, to Emma's point, is we actually do intersection reports. So people who are interested in this topic but are also influential in that topic. We were running a case study for someone that was talking about Doritos and wanted to match Doritos to NFL. So understanding those cross points and those intersection points can be really interesting and important and provide new areas of influence.
Awesome. Well, if you had one very quick, since we're almost out of time, if you had one very quick tip for influencer discovery, like what's your top tip in tweetable format? That's just to keep it short, by the way.
I'll go first so no one steals mine, but I would say always be listening. In everything you're doing, just always be listening and always be collecting. I'll use that word again.
Mine would be to try organic things first, like engage, listen, look at the community, look at the network, and try and do things organically. And when you find things that work, then add paid layer.
I would say carefully choose your keywords, making sure that the keywords that you use are organic to the network and not something that you're imposing upon it or assuming.
I like that.
Yeah, always be listening is one of my taglines, so I definitely support that tip. And just knowing your customers. There's a lot of amazing advocates in your, in your home base. So, get to know people who already are your fans and amplify their message.
All right. Well, we are just about out of time here. Sherry, could you give a plug for what's going on next week and a little bit about CMAD?
Sure. Next week we're talking online community policies with Patrick O'Keefe, Sarah Robinson, and David DeWald. So it should be really good, really useful, lots of good information coming out there. And Barack from our team is also joining to co-host for that one because she's done quite a bit with policies. Ignore him. CMAD is Community Manager Appreciation Day, and that is the 4th Monday, I believe, in January. And if you want to get involved, just go over to cmad.co/participate, and you can let us know how you want to help out there. We're especially looking right now for more international people to kind of step up and fill in those hours that are, I believe, 7 to 1 GMT, because those are not really ideal hours North American time, but we have lots of awesome people who are awake during those hours. So, yep, that's pretty much that.
And that's over at cmads.co. So please come over once again and sign up for a panel. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, have yourselves a fantastic Friday the 13th, and have a great weekend. And we'll see you next Friday. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.